welcome to episode 159 of AviaDev Inside Africa, the podcast offering a window to the world of African aviation with your host, Jon Howell, CEO and founder of AviaDev Africa. We are back for a new series of shows spotlighting some of the success stories and reasons to be positive ahead of the AviaDev Africa 2021 online event, which will take place on the 9th to the 11th of June. It's free to join, so make sure you register now at www.aviationdevelop.com/Africa, and that link will be in the show notes as well. Today, we're going to be hearing from Lyft, an airline that bucked the trend and launched operations during the pandemic down there in South Africa. But first, we're going to hear from an innovative provider of passenger service systems and much more besides AeroCRS. They're a great example of how innovation can be nurtured and harnessed to adapt to the changing market conditions. And I'm delighted to say that my first guest today on the podcast is Meir Hadassi Turner, who is the CEO and founder of AeroCRS. So welcome to the podcast, Meir, and I believe you're in Tel Aviv today.
Yeah, thank you very much, John, for the introduction. Yeah, I'm in lovely Tel Aviv. The situation here is becoming better and better. So hopefully we'll be facing some less restrictions in the next upcoming weeks. So the government and the operations of the different let's say parties involved have done good with the vaccination rollout. So it's really looking good.
Yeah, Israel definitely seems to have been the poster boy for, or the poster girl, the poster child for sort of vaccination. And, you know, outside of Australia and New Zealand, you know, we've obviously got different environments. So we're hoping that sets the trend for obviously the rest of the world and for Africa to get those vaccines out and get us all traveling again. So let's look back to 2020. Obviously, 2020 was a pretty much a swear word for aviation. It was a tough year for aviation globally, but AeroCRS had an incredible year. You signed 32 new airline customers, one of which is, of course, Lyft, that we're going to hear from shortly. So what was it about the market conditions that made the solution such a good fit? And how did you possibly adapt to what happened?
In regards of the market, I think that in the past year, and still, by the way, we are seeing a big growth towards domestic and regional airlines that are stepping in instead of the legacy and flag carriers because of the situation, because of those carriers having a lot more, let's say, operation-wise and a bigger operations, and they need quite a lot of money in order to survive. So these startup airlines, and for those airlines, small airlines operators, and for airlines that are changing operation structure and moving from opening small schedules and things like that, I think that this is what they have found at AeroCRS. We are a true SaaS solution, and we were a perfect fit for them. Several reasons. I think first to say, of course, Lyft is among them. The first reason, I think that the fast and easy implementation is one of, I think, the key factors when starting an airline, specifically in the pandemic time, that you need to go live immediately in order to close a gap created by the legacy and flag carriers. And I think the team ability to set up things very fast and to cover most of the airline needs in one, let's say, out of the box system is one of our strength points in this case. I also think that the demand for a solution that includes many features, such as we have, and as I said, ready as an out of the box, is also a key factor. And I think that, and you could see that because features like that are required, for example, like self-service, and I think the pandemic thrown the aviation industry into more self-service by the passenger, because agents are suddenly unavailable because they are working from home or they are not in the office or other pain points, let's say, in the industry. So the change is toward self-service, and a lot of things when a flight is canceled, the management of IR ops and things like that. This is what, and we are the capability of AeroCRS to support that. I think that gave us one of the advantages. I think also, and the last advantage I think that we've got versus other systems is the fact that we have the AeroCRS network distribution, which is basically like a marketplace with a fast implementation that help the airlines to really put their sales directly on OTAs and meta search engines.
Yeah, fantastic. And I mean, you talked about that. I think we're all moving away, and we were already starting to get away from that kind of contact element. And, you know, any sort of contact now is seen as a bit strange. So it's a great time to kind of accelerate that contactless process. In terms of the African market specifically, obviously we're going to hear from Lift shortly, but how do you see the African market? Is that particularly, what is it particularly about that market that makes it attractive to your solution, or vice versa?
First of all, I think that the African market, we can call it home. 15 years ago, we started the company. The first customer was, and still our customer, by the way, 15 years ago, is Air Kenya. And I remember Africa when I used to come to their office and connect with a modem that not many of our viewers might remember, that it was you doing that fax sound and connecting, and I was connecting to the internet. Even then and now, I see big opportunities in the continent, and I think that the continent is we need to connect, and to connect not only domestic and regional, also specifically into the entire continent. There is a big and a huge, a huge opportunity in the African market.
Absolutely. And in terms of the customers that you already have and the customers you're talking to, talk to us about, you know, what is it they're looking for? I think one of the things you talked about already is just that speed and ease of implementation. Is that the most important thing that they're looking for in the current market? Because we know that they're having to be incredibly responsive to the market.
Yeah, I would say, and talking about the African market, by the way, specifically, if you remember, Harold Samuel said back in 1944, location, location, location. Now, I think that you can take the same location, location, location and use it today. And I see that, and we see a need, a growth, also in Africa, and by the way, all over the world from my point of view, for the airline to have a location, which is the online presence. And the online presence, whether as a website, on social media, these are the things that we see as potential customers, what they are looking for. They're looking for a better visibility. They are looking for a system that will give them a good presence online, a good capability, and a very good capability, not only for themselves, but also from the passenger point of view. So we see, by the way, we see many airlines, even big ones, that are entirely relying today less on their GDS, but more on direct connectivity to the passengers via the B2C platform and B2B with local agents. And the African market, by the way, I think this is what makes the difference in the African market, that most of the African market are still with local agents and local tour operators that are using the airline's content and having the ability of providing a B2B. This is specifically in the African market. And also alongside that, having their capability of hooking up via API, NDC, or any direct options, affiliation, and so on. So this is what I see as a potential, as the potential requirement by customers.
Yeah, definitely. Distribution is changing. We're talking about it a lot here at AviaDev, and we've done a lot of sessions about different types of technology that obviously the airlines now are implementing. They're waking up to. They're finally saying, you know, we need to do this. And I think that element of the business with the distribution, some of that won't go away, but there's a whole new generation of travelers that are used to doing things through their phones, through their computers. They want to have that experience. They want that seamlessness of travel. And if you're an airline out there that wants to get that market and capture that market, you've got to look at these, because there's cost savings. You know, it's going to really help the bottom line, because we know that obviously cost is absolutely everything at the moment, getting that as low as possible. So what about product development? What about taking things forward? And yeah, please come back on that.
Yeah, I would just come back on that, on the fact that I think the mobile insertion, in the African continent is one of the big ones that we have seen, especially because of all the mobile payments that there are spread in Africa. I think this is one of the continents, and I think it's the only continent, let's say, that is using mobile money so good. And having us as AeroCRS, we've done like connections to M-Pesa and to Airtel and to all the others. This is, I think, a fundamental requirement by an airline to have those payment options available on their commercial website, because people are going in online from the mobile, paying via the mobile, finishing their transaction on the mobile, and that's really important. And we are very happy that we are able to provide that.
Yeah, definitely. It's that frictionless. It's understanding the culture, understanding how people pay for things, and then it's making it as easy as possible for them to do that. And like you say, the more payment solutions you can integrate into that, then obviously the airlines are going to reap the rewards. So before we let you go, in terms of product development, what are you working on? What's next? It's been an incredible 12 months with so much change, but are you seeing sort of a clear trajectory here of what's going to be needed over the next couple of years?
Over the next couple of years, we have, I think, let's say 3 major focuses from our side. First of all, is improving the self-service of passengers into a capability of giving the airline to have almost zero manpower in call centers. Meaning that the passengers are able to do all my cancellations or amendments and everything. Everything should be done by the passenger on its own, according to the rules of the airline, of course. But then supplying that feature is something which is very important for that. The 2 other major options for us is we have opened 2 big marketplaces, which basically allow the airline to expand their, first of all, one marketplace is the AeroCRS network, which is basically like a marketplace that you can say Kayak, Skyscanner, Google Flights, and all of those that the airline can just simply tick on and start selling. And this is one of the marketplaces, and we keep on adding, whether, for example, one of the key players that we're adding right now is TravelStat, which is a key player in Africa. So adding more and more players, whether they are local or international, to help the airline grow in terms of inbound revenue. And also another marketplace is our ancillary marketplace. And by the way, one of the key players that we have in the ancillary marketplace, which is already active, but we keep on adding things, is Hepstar, which is a South African based company, and for insurance and non-insurance products. So basically, by affiliation to a third party, the airline is capable of maximizing the revenue from the passengers, while they don't need to do anything other than collect the money and decide on the affiliate. And the passenger is getting extra service, and the passenger is happy. We are also doing a connection right now to Priceline for bookings and car rentals. So all of those things, because, by the way, because we see a trend, and if you saw Focusrite article a few days ago of the interviews with international airlines, passengers are going to book more directly with the airline. So we need to have the airline's website as a really, let's say a good place for them to have everything included together.
Yeah, so it's airlines taking control back of the distribution and managing the process, but then actually benefiting, like you say, from all the ancillaries. So in Europe, in the Middle East, we're very used to that. You buy a fare, then do you want to book a seat? Do you want this? Do you want that? You pay as you go for what you need, which makes a lot of sense. I think in the new day and age, this is the future. And again, those airlines that are playing that game, I think it makes a lot of sense. So finally, before we let you go, how can our listeners get in touch with you and the team if they want to find out more about your solutions?
Very simple. AeroCRS.com. There is a chat in the bottom right section. There's a chat. That's it. We are available 24/7, and just give us a call.
Amazing. Well, thank you for your time today, Meir. So what we're going to do now for everybody listening and watching is we're actually going to hop on a quick flight. We're going to leave Tel Aviv and we're going to head over to South Africa and we're going to hear from the Lyft team. So, Jon, over to you. Welcome back to the podcast. Through the power of technology, you now find me in Cape Town, South Africa, where I'm joined by Cilliers Jordaan, Head of Commercial, and Jon Ayache, CEO at Lyft, South Africa's brand new airline. So welcome to the podcast, gents.
Thanks for having us. Thank you.
So I interviewed your co-founder, Gidon Novik, back in the late summer of 2020. So that was obviously ahead of the launch of the airline. And he talked about the big thing with Lyft was doing things differently to what was already out there and offering an alternative. For those who aren't aware of the airline and its kind of key tenets, can you give us an overview as to the fleet, the network, and of course, the business model and what you're trying to achieve?
For sure. So maybe we start with the business model and then we can talk a little bit more about the fleet and the network. So my background is not in aviation. So coming into it, I think the idea was to launch something that is a little bit different in terms of a domestic carrier. We don't see ourselves as being a low-cost airline. We are what we consider a hybrid. So offering very attractive prices, but with a far greater value proposition to the customer. So putting the customer at the center and saying, what is it that customers really want out of an airline? And again, as someone who's not from the industry, I know what I want as a passenger, and we try to package all of those things together. So I think the perfect example of something that we've done very differently is offered flexibility as a standard. So if you want to change, cancel, you're not going to get whacked with huge penalties, and it's very easy to do it. You just go online and make those changes. So I think front and center, that's a big part of it. And key, and I think we're going to talk about it in a little bit, is like what are the platform that we need to achieve those things? What's the technology that we needed to do that? And we can definitely unpack that. So in a nutshell, that's what we've been trying to create. And because we're doing it in an exceptionally challenging time, we're taking a very demand-driven approach. So the model that we use is very flexible, very agile, and we can grow and flex the number of flights that we're doing, the size of our fleet very, very, very quickly and easily, and if need be, pull back where necessary. So that's the key to our ability to launch during COVID. Cilliers, you can unpack a little bit about the network.
Yeah, just adding to what Jonathan said, is I think the aim is really to give the customers the control and the confidence when they book with Lyft and when they travel and make plans. I mean, it's uncertain times, and that's where the flexibility definitely plays a big part, as well as our wallet product, which we have introduced, which is really an online e-wallet that the customer can use when they're making changes, when they cancel their flights. It's available to them, and it's available for use immediately. No waiting periods or anything like that. They can access it immediately. So we're really trying to give control to the customer in their travel plans. So, in terms of the fleet and the network, we've started up with Joburg, between Johannesburg and Cape Town, which is obviously one of the busiest routes in the world. We're currently operating the Airbus A320s. We're operating 2 of them at the moment, with access to ramp up quite quickly, like Jonathan said, if needed, depending on the demand and how the demand play out with the COVID situation in South Africa. We started in December last year, so it's about 4 months ago, and it's been really good performance up to now in terms of load factors and in comparison to the market through the past 3 months. We're very happy with the support we're getting, passenger loads we're getting, and just looking forward to build from that. In terms of the network beyond Joburg, Cape Town, definitely have our eyes set on other domestic routes as well as the regional routes. But it's really uncertain times at the moment, so we will need to got various options and plans that we can roll out depending on how the market develops.
Great.
One thing that I was very nervous about when we launched, because as an outsider, you don't really understand how these things, how everything works, was our operational performance. And I think one thing that I've been blown away with is how incredible the teams coming together, from flight operations to ground ops. We've been able to manage that off the bat and achieve, in our second month of operation, we had 100% on-time performance.
Wow.
99% in months 2 and 3 as well. So really being able to operate extremely efficiently, very, very quickly.
Yeah, that's vital, obviously, to get the customer confidence. And of course, you all work together as a collective with the airport company as well, and the ground handling agencies. People who are outside the industry don't realize just how interconnected everything is. And one of those partners that you've worked with, obviously, over the last few months since in the plan up to launch and since launch is AeroCRS. So give us a bit of an overview as to how that relationship came about and what specifically was the issue that you wanted to address when you got them on board, and how they've helped you sort of over the last couple of months.
So when we decided to launch, we wanted to do it very quickly. And we started speaking to a number of different PSS providers. And ultimately what it came down to was, one, the speed at which they could execute, very, very cost effective and flexible solution. So very much in line with our philosophy. And then the last piece, I think, was about the team, very willing to collaborate and innovate on the things that we wanted to build. So Cilliers spoke about the wallet. That didn't really exist in the shape and form that we wanted it. The flexibility, they didn't have it available that you could change and cancel flights online. Again, they built that for us. I mean, when other systems providers were talking about 4, 5, 6 months to implement, we spoke to Meir, Ram and the team, and they were like, we asked them how quickly they could do it, and they basically said we can do it in a week.
Wow.
So obviously a lot of complexities, and it takes time to get it working perfectly, but they were streaks ahead in terms of how quickly they could get it up and running for us.
Yeah, and I think just adding to that, yes, getting up and running quickly, which was obviously the main focus, but beyond that also the speed at which we can get things done and developed and changed according to the needs that we have. That's really been exceptional, and the support from the guys has really been great.
Yeah, and that, as you said earlier, that's changing on a regular basis. You've started operations on what was pre-pandemic in the top 10 busiest routes in the world, Cape Town, Johannesburg, in terms of capacity. It's a really well-established route. And that's where I wanted to go now, was just to ask that question about the airline itself. In terms of you've talked about performance from an on-time perspective. I wanted to delve a little bit deeper into those expansion plans because, of course, you'll be with us at AviaDev in June to take those meetings with the airports, civil aviation authorities from within the region and beyond. And you've got an aircraft in an A320 that's got an incredible range. You're not tied to very short sector routes, although of course they've got to be profitable and all the rest of it. So I'd love to sort of just delve into that a little bit deeper. You're looking at all those options in terms of outside of South Africa, or do you think that in the short term it will be more intra-South African routes first and foremost, or are you just looking at every opportunity as it comes?
I think in line with the flexibility that we offer in the model and to the passengers, in terms of the development plan, we're also going to have to be very flexible. And like I mentioned, we've got various things that we're looking at, but it's impossible to tell at the moment how the current pandemic and that will play out over the next few months. There's definitely a lot of regional opportunities. I mean, with South African Airways and SA Express not in the playing field anymore, there's some opportunities opening up there, but the demand will not be at the same level pre-COVID. So there's a lot of questions that needs to be answered in terms of the gauge, in terms of how quickly the demand recovers, the international feeding traffic, etc. So definitely something we're looking at. the order at which it will play out will all depend on how things develop over the next few months. So yeah, I think longer term view, definitely domestic and regional is on the plans, medium to short term. Again, depending on
yeah.
It just needs to be commercially viable. And I think with the uncertainty and with everything that's going on, that's the challenge. So, I mean, a lot of these routes were dependent on international traffic coming in and business travel, and a lot of questions around how long is it going to take for those routes to, for those to groups of people to start traveling again.
Yeah.
I think the key thing that Cilliers said is we're very flexible, and if it's one thing we've proved in launching in 3 months is that we can do it very, very quickly. So there's a lot of exciting opportunity. It'll just be around timing.
Yeah, it always struck me from that first interview with Gidon that really you were trying to create something for South Africa first, and like anything, you've got to build your reputation, be on time, be efficient, etc. Then you can start to talk about international partnerships, and because you need to build the confidence in the product, but also then you can get a name outside of South Africa that people say, well, I want to connect with Lyft, I want to try the product, etc. So actually, I know that it's not ideal for anybody, and it's not ideal for the South African tourism industry, and I'm heavily involved in that too, that the international feed has obviously, been stopped or really been hurt quite badly by the pandemic. But I would imagine that when you came up with the idea for the airline, it was South African first, for the people of South Africa, to connect them. Am I right in thinking that?
Well, when we started it, we knew that when we were doing it, we knew that the challenges around being difficult to travel and there not being international traffic, we knew all of that. So I think what we're trying to build here is not something that's going to last a few years. We're trying to build something long term, and international traffic will come back, and we know we'll be a part of that. So I think it's as you said, it gives us a nice opportunity to get the basics right, to build the brand, get that awareness domestically. Both, I think, first with a lot of the leisure travelers that have been moving around, and then slowly as business starts to recover with business, and then internationally, I think we'll definitely regionally and internationally we'll take that step as it comes.
Amazing. Well, thank you for joining us today and adding some color to everything that we're trying to achieve here. And we look forward to welcoming you to AviaDev Africa in a couple of months' time in June. And until then, thank you. Enjoy the beautiful mother city down there in Cape Town. And thank you, Cilliers. Thank you, Jon, for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Jon.